So I am joined this morning by Mark Brown. I'm going to do a quick intro and then we'll dive straight into the questions, Mark. So 12 years with General Mills and an incredible kind of FMCG career to date. So craft and Kerry Foods, amongst others, in your earlier career. And current role, so you've got a big geographical remit. So am I right in thinking it's Europe and Australasia? And Old El Paso is obviously one of the main brands that you've got responsibility for. Is that an accurate reflection?
Yeah, that's right. And also our snacks business and of course Haagen-Dazs, which is a big ice cream brand for us, a big business for us.
Love Haagen-Dazs. So really fab kind of FMCG kind of pedigree in terms of marketing experience. And a very obvious kind of first question for me, I'm kind of curious, what was the attraction for you of marketing and marketing for some of the world's most recognized food groups?
Yeah, sure. So it started from a really young age. So I remember when I was growing up, and this probably says a lot about my attention span. I was more fascinated by advertising breaks than I was actual TV programs, and advertisements just got me hooked. And the thought of how you can engage, entertain, and do everything that an advert does within 30 seconds. Just was very interesting to me, and I used to love watching the ad breaks more than the actual programs, and that's when I think my love affair with marketing really kind of first kicked off. And then as I was going through school as well, and there's another piece of there's another confirmatory moment when in what was called home economics back in the day, when I did it, we there was a big competition that our local bakery ran where they were inviting pupils to design a product from start to finish in terms of the actual product, the packaging, the branding, the design of it, all together for them then to sell in their bakery. And I won the competition. So at that point, I'm connecting the dots a little bit. And I'm thinking, okay, this could be interesting for me. And then finally, I think the final thing that's attracted me into marketing is team sport has played a big role in my life, and I really see marketing as the ultimate team sport, in that as a marketeer, I'm relying on a host of others, a real army to get stuff done, all the way from creative agencies all the way through to colleagues on in our factories making the products, and I love being part of that team sport, and I love kind of really being at the hub of it. So that's what got me into marketing. And then from a food industry perspective, food really runs in my family. My mum started life as a baker. My uncle was a butcher. Their parents, my grandma and granddad, ran a cafe. So food's been a big part of certainly my upbringing and a big part of my family life. And I just love the magnetic powers of food. And to answer the final part of the question in terms of iconic brands and why iconic brands and why choosing this path is quite simply I love seeing my work in real life, whether that's a piece of creative, a piece of design, a new product, whatever it is, and I take real pride in doing that. And I feel very fortunate that I've been able to do it and spend a relatively limited amount of time on these wonderful brands that are going to last a lot longer than my lifetime. So it's a real privilege and honor to do the work I do on such iconic brands.
I've got to ask, what was the product that you designed?
It was a kind of a biscuit. It was a kind of a take on a gingerbread man biscuit. It wasn't that inventive when I look back, but yeah, it
Good for you taking the initiative, following it all through. That's absolutely fantastic. Well, you touched on brands there, and the role of brands, certainly over the last few years, it would have become maybe there've been some big challenges for brands in general. What do you see as the role of brands, and are there sort of guidelines or rules that brands should follow?
Yeah, I think if I think back to the last 4 or 5 years, it's certainly been the most volatile time in my career, as I'm sure it has been for many other marketeers. If you think about what the world has gone through, and think about the big kind of global macro events, from Brexit through to a pandemic, through to then supply chain disruptions, through to high levels of inflation, through to, you know, a very tough economy at the moment, and then, you know, all the political instability we've got in the world at the moment. I've never quite known anything like we're seeing right now. And at a very simple level, the role of brands doesn't really change. And I think quite simply, brands need to solve problems and deliver joy for consumers. And I think there's never been a more, I think, valid or important time or reason for brands to do that, because consumers need it. So I think, you know, just in terms of what marketers need to ensure that their brands are doing, it's just distinctive and new ways to solve those problems and deliver joy. And how can they do that more, turn up the volume on it? Because my goodness, I think consumers need it at the moment.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. You know, you talked that it was the adverts and the campaigns initially that kind of caught your attention. I'm curious, you know, what's the biggest risk that you've taken with regards to brand work or a campaign or something within your career?
Yeah, I think I look back and I'd say the biggest risk that certainly I've taken is we worked on a Haagen-Dazs global relaunch, okay? And Haagen-Dazs is a brand that stretches across 150 markets, and it's got very different cultural context. It's got very different routes to market. It's got a very different, I think, standing in each market. And it came to a point where we were just seen on Haagen-Dazs that we needed to change the brand, and we needed to relaunch the brand. And we touched every item of the brand from, you know, from start to finish, you know, all the way from product all the way through to how it looks in store, how our Haagen-Dazs cafes look internally, the menus we offer in those cafes, you know, all of our communication, everything. And when you're working on a relaunch of that scale, it's very difficult to test that with consumers in a broad enough way that is going to give you the certainty around what you're doing is going to be right for each and every market, each and every consumer across the world. So as we went on this journey, it was, you know, I'd say it was real, you know, it was based in as much fact and science as possible, but then there was a big element of artistry and creativity and belief in terms of what we were doing as a team, and that it would improve the future for the Haagen-Dazs brand. So, you know, and within that there are all kinds of different elements, but it was, you know, it was that big global relaunch, and it takes belief and it takes passion, and it takes, I think, leaders who want to put themselves out there to kind of be shot down almost, because you're not going to get all of it right. So then having a backup plan, an action plan, then to kind of remedy anything that doesn't go quite to plan is important too. But yeah, that was a big one for me.
And what about sort of looking forward? You know, we talked about kind of the challenges that brands may have faced in the last few years, and, you know, really focusing on offering value to the consumer. What do you think might be the priority for senior, you know, brand marketeers over the next year or so?
Yeah, I think as I said, you know, we faced 4 or 5 years of real kind of global macro impacts on markets quite broadly, and, you know, hopefully at some point things will start to settle down. And I think what is going to be important for marketeers, and it's a simple thing, we need to get back to doing what we're paid to do, and what we should be very good at doing, which is driving consumer demand and bringing volume back into our business, whichever way that looks at. So I think that's the important thing that marketeers need to do. And the way I certainly talk about it with my teams is just on a very simplistic level. It's working the 4 Ps hard and ensuring it's a strong plan across those 4 Ps. But I think breaking it down even more simply, it's making sure your brands are easy to buy and brands are distinct, okay? And then working and understanding what your core demand drivers are, and then working those hard. But yeah, I think it's going to be important that marketers get back to driving demand, get back to driving consumer demand.
And you know what, that fits absolutely with the briefs that we've had through in the last week or so. It's all been about driving demand, customer acquisition, brand awareness. You know, it's, you know, very much focused on those areas. you've reached, you've had huge success with your roles through your career. If you were to offer any kind of hints or tips or guidance to kind of the rising stars, our senior marketing managers, our heads of, who are kind of working their way up in their career, is there anything you could share that would be of value to them?
Yeah, sure. So I think what I've experienced as I've kind of worked up in my career is the roles in many ways, or your day or your week becomes more and more internally focused. And you're
Yeah.
sat on leadership teams and you know talking about topics that might not be even attached to marketing. And what I found is that the 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 natural kind of habit of me as I've gone up is to become more and more internally focused, just because that's how the tempo of my working life and the team that I sit on run. And it's very important, I think, as marketeers get to senior levels, to remain externally connected. And the game is played outside, right? It's not played in the four walls of an office or four walls of a virtual office. The game is outside. And it's very important, I think, for marketeers as they rise up to really, maintain and even grow their external connectivity, and learn about what's going on, connect to consumers, learn about, best practice, speak to peers, all those things. So that's something that I've really found that I've had to certainly make a lot more time for as I've taken on more senior roles.
And then the final bit, we talk a lot about mindset, and you are an extremely positive person. You're obviously very much into your team sports, etc. Are there any habits or practices that you follow to maintain a positive mindset? Any hints or tips?
Yeah, I think I think there's a couple of things, and the first thing is probably going to be obvious in that I've mentioned team sports, and exercise for me is very important. But what that can mean as well is if I'm working from home, just taking out a quick break to take something to the post office, just go and walk around the block. Just it focuses a mind on a task that is kind of mundane, which then frees the mind up, because the mind can do a lot more than just focus on that mundane task, and then that helps get my brain going. So any exercise of any form, I'd recommend to anyone, and even if that's just a walk to go and get something from the shop, or take something to the post office, or whatever it is. And then the other piece that certainly I do, in times when it's tough, and when I need to dig down and get resilient, is just really appreciate the journey I've had. And I've had an incredible journey where I've been very fortunate to work on some fantastic businesses and brands, and have some fantastic opportunities that I dreamt of when I was younger. And I think remembering that journey, remembering the journey I've been on, and the good fortune, the people that have helped me along the way, just helps me kind of stay resilient and really appreciate the situation I'm in, even if it's a bad situation.
I think that's a really good one, and it's about sort of expressing gratitude, I guess, isn't it, for all the positive things. And I think it's almost impossible to express gratitude and be fearful and worrying about something at the same time. So it's great because it really,
Yeah.
again, focuses the mind, and it just keeps you, and it keeps you focused, and it keeps the resilience. But oh, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure, and every success with your career going forward. It's been a joy to speak with you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Susie.
Pleasure.